At first he thought it was just another beggar, a man slumped by the roadside, thin, broken, forgotten. But then Ibrahim Traoré stopped, that face familiar, that voice shaking. "Ibrahim, do you remember me?" It wasn't a stranger. It was the neighbor who once fed his family when they had nothing. At first, Ibrahim thought the man was about to collapse. His knees trembled, his chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Then his eyes lifted, and Ibrahim saw them clearly. Eyes that once shone with kindness, now dull and rimmed with tears. "Abdoulaye," Ibrahim whispered the name as if speaking to the past itself. The man's lips parted a faint smile, breaking through the dust and despair. "You still remember me?" he croaked. Of course he remembered. This was the neighbor who had once brought bowls of millet when Ibrahim's family went hungry. The man who taught him to ride an old wooden bicycle. The one who told him, "Never give up, little brother. Life will test you, but you must rise." And now that same man sat on the ground, hair unwashed, shirt torn, forgotten by everyone. Ibrahim reached out, gripping his shoulder. The crowd slowed, curious, some even mocking. "Look," one voice muttered, the president touching a beggar. Another scoffed, "He'll step away once the cameras leave." But Ibrahim's hand did not move. His grip only tightened. "What happened to you?" Ibrahim asked, voice low but firm. Abdoulaye tried to answer, but his throat caught. His chest heaved as if words weighed more than his body could bear. He coughed, wiped his eyes, and finally spoke. "It's a long story, Ibrahim. Longer than I thought I'd ever have to tell you. Not like this. Not on the street. You won't tell it here," Ibrahim said softly. "You'll tell it at my table." Abdoulaye shook his head, shame in every line of his face. "No. Look at me. I cannot sit at your table. I have nothing left. I don't even deserve to enter your car." Ibrahim bent down eye level, his voice steady. "You once fed me when I had nothing. You gave me dignity when the world tried to take it. Don't tell me what you do or don't deserve. You are my brother." The man's tears spilled freely. His voice cracked like broken glass. "No one has called me brother in years." Ibrahim turned to his security, who hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. "Stand back," he ordered. His tone left no room for questions. Slowly, Ibrahim slid his arm under Abdoulaye's frail body, helping him rise. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted, recording the moment. For a brief second, time itself seemed to stop. An ordinary street turned into a stage of raw humanity. And in that silence, one thing was clear. This was not pity. This was recognition. Before we continue with this heartbreaking story, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Comment below. I can't wait to read your answers. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Abdoulaye sat hunched on the edge of the chair, his back bent as if the weight of years had crushed him. His eyes darted to the floor, to the table, anywhere but the man sitting across from him. A tray of food rested between them, steam curling upward, but he did not touch it. His hands shook as if they had forgotten how to hold a spoon. "Eat," Ibrahim said softly. For a moment, Abdoulaye hesitated. Then slowly he lifted the spoon and took a bite. His lips trembled as he chewed, his throat moving painfully with each swallow. It was as if every grain of rice carried memories of hunger. He ate in silence, each sound of the spoon scraping against the plate, echoing like thunder in the still room. When the last bite was gone, Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice low. "Now tell me, what happened to you? My brother? You were strong once, respected. How did it come to this?" Abdoulaye's shoulders sagged. For a long moment, no words came. Then, with a voice that cracked like dry wood, he began. "It started 5 years ago. I had a small shop. Nothing big, just bicycle spare parts enough to feed my family. My children went to school. My wife..." She smiled then. "We had little, but it was enough." His breath caught. He rubbed his hands together as though trying to wipe the memory away. But then, My youngest daughter fell ill. Fever coughing nights filled with her cries. I carried her to the hospital. I begged them, please save her. They asked for money. I had none. They told me to leave. His lips trembled. His eyes closed tight. She died in my arms before the sun rose. The words hung heavy, cutting the air like a blade. Ibrahim's fists clenched his jaw tight, but he said nothing. Abdoulaye continued his voice, barely above a whisper. After that, my wife changed. Her laughter disappeared. Her eyes, cold. She said it was my fault. She called me useless. One day, I came home early and found her with another man. She left me that night, took my son, said I was no husband, no father, and the law believed her lies. She took the house, the shop, everything. He spread his hands, palms empty, as though showing the hollowness of his life. I lost it all. My work, my family, my dignity. I slept under bridges. I begged. At first friends helped, but shame is heavy, Ibrahim. Soon their doors closed too. No one wants to carry a man who has already fallen. His voice cracked, breaking under the weight of his confession. I wanted to die. I wanted the hunger to swallow me, the darkness to hide me. Every day I prayed not for life, but for an end. He looked up, his sunken eyes meeting Ibrahim's. And then, today on that street, I saw you, surrounded by guards dressed as a leader. And me, I am nothing, just a shadow of who I was. Silence filled the room again. The ticking of the clock grew louder, marking each painful second. Ibrahim stared at the man before him, the neighbor who had once shared bowls of millet with his family, the man who once lifted him onto his shoulders and called him little brother. Finally, Ibrahim stood. He walked slowly around the table and knelt beside Abdoulaye. His voice was steady, but his eyes glistened. You are not nothing. Do you remember what you told me long ago? You said, never give up, little brother. Life will test you, but you must rise. Those words carried me through battles, through nights of fear. They helped shape the man I became. He placed his hand firmly on Abdoulaye's shoulder. Now it is my turn. You gave me strength when I had none. Today I will give it back to you. You are my brother. Always. Abdoulaye's lips quivered. Tears poured freely down his cheeks, hot and unrestrained. He tried to speak, but the words dissolved into sobs. Ibrahim pulled him into an embrace, strong, unshaken, the kind of embrace that tells a man he is not forgotten. Staff members watching from a distance turned away, some wiping their own eyes. And in that moment, the room was no longer filled with despair. It was filled with something else, something Abdoulaye thought he had lost forever. Hope. The following morning, the sun had barely risen when Ibrahim walked into Abdoulaye's room. The man was still asleep, curled under a blanket, his breathing shallow but peaceful. For the first time in years, Abdoulaye had slept without fear of the cold ground beneath him. Ibrahim stood for a moment, watching. Then he whispered almost to himself, You lifted me once, my brother. Now it's my turn. By mid-morning, the presidential convoy moved through the city streets, but inside the lead car, Ibrahim wasn't headed to a meeting or an office. Beside him sat Abdoulaye, his eyes wide, clothes freshly laundered, but still hanging loosely on his frail frame. He clutched the seat as though it might vanish at any second. Where are we going? He asked, voice uncertain. You'll see, Ibrahim replied. The car slowed to a stop in front of the National Hospital. Guards stepped aside, opening the gates. As they entered, whispers rippled among the staff and patients outside. Cameras lifted. Everyone recognized the man stepping out of the car, the president himself. But gasps followed when they saw him supporting Abdoulaye, helping him walk like a brother guiding a brother. A doctor hurried forward, bowing slightly. Excellency, we were not informed. There is no time for formalities. Ibrahim interrupted, his voice sharp. This man will be examined, fully, immediately. The doctor hesitated. There are procedures, paperwork. Ibrahim's eyes flared. Enough. If bureaucracy has more value than a man's life, then burn the papers. Treat him now. The command echoed through the hallway. Nurses scrambled into motion. A wheelchair appeared. IV bags prepared, tests ordered. Abdoulaye sat stunned as machines beeped blood samples, taken doctors whispering about malnutrition, untreated infections, possible pneumonia. For years, his body had been ignored. Now, suddenly it mattered. As they worked, Ibrahim stood at his side, never moving away. His presence was both shield and sword shielding Abdoulaye from neglect, cutting through the apathy that had nearly killed him. At one point, Abdoulaye clutched his hand weakly. "Why are you doing this for me? I am just a man forgotten by everyone." Ibrahim leaned close, his voice low but firm. "Because once when I was the one forgotten, you remembered me. You gave me bread when I was hungry. You gave me dignity when I had none. Today, I am only giving back what was always yours." Tears welled in Abdoulaye's tired eyes. He tried to speak, but the words dissolved into silence. By late afternoon, the tests were complete. The doctors reported a long road ahead. Medications, rest, proper food. But there was hope. Real, tangible hope. As Ibrahim prepared to leave, a crowd had gathered outside the hospital gates. Word had spread. Phones filmed as the president emerged, his arm firmly around the frail man beside him. Some clapped, some cried. All were silent with awe. Then Ibrahim spoke, his voice carrying over the crowd. "This man once lifted me when I was weak. Today I lift him. And tomorrow I promise you no man in this nation will be left to fall alone." The applause rose swelling like a wave. Abdoulaye bowed his head, overwhelmed his body, trembling not with weakness this time, but with something else, renewed dignity. The convoy pulled away, leaving behind a city buzzing with whispers. For the first time in years, Abdoulaye was not invisible. He was seen, he was valued, he was alive, and it was only the beginning. The news spread quickly. By evening, every radio, television, and street corner carried the same story. The president had personally carried a beggar into the hospital. Some hailed it as compassion. Others scoffed, calling it a performance. But Ibrahim knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The following day, he summoned his ministers and advisors to the palace. The room filled with polished shoes, stiff suits, and guarded expressions. Files lay stacked on the long mahogany table. Outside, the city still buzzed with whispers about Abdoulaye. Inside, the air was tense, expectant. Ibrahim entered without ceremony. His face was stern, his steps deliberate. He placed a thin folder on the table and looked around the room. This he said, his voice low but sharp, "Is Abdoulaye, my neighbor, my brother. A man who once fed my family when we had nothing. Yesterday I found him dying on the street. Do you know why no one answered?" Eyes shifted. Papers rustled. Because our system failed him, Ibrahim continued, his voice rising. Because hospitals demanded payment before treatment. Because judges believed forged documents over truth. Because we have allowed corruption, bureaucracy, and cold indifference to choke the life from our people. One minister cleared his throat nervously. "Excellency, with respect. The state cannot provide for every beggar. There are procedures, budgets, priorities." Ibrahim's palm slammed against the table, the sound cracking through the silence. "Budgets, procedures. Tell me, what is the worth of a man's life compared to your paperwork?" His eyes burned as he scanned the room. A nation that lets its children die for lack of medicine. A nation that lets its teachers, workers, and neighbors rot on the street. That nation is already bankrupt. Bankrupt of soul. The room went still. A bead of sweat slid down one official's temple. Another advisor tried to interject. "But, Excellency, there are limits. If we open the treasury for every case, chaos will follow. The opposition will accuse you of favoritism. The press will Ibrahim cut him off his voice like thunder. Let them talk. Let them accuse. I will not stand by while men like Abdoulaye are crushed by a system built to serve itself. If caring for the poor is a crime, then I will commit it every day. A murmur rippled around the table. Some looked uneasy, others inspired. Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice quieter now, but sharper than ever. Yesterday, Abdoulaye told me something I cannot forget. He said he felt invisible in his own country. Do you understand the shame of that? A nation that makes its own people invisible has already lost sight of its future. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he pulled a pen from his pocket and signed the folder before him. This is a presidential order. Effective immediately, no hospital in this nation shall deny treatment because of inability to pay. Emergency care is a right, not a privilege, and any official caught extorting money from the desperate will face trial. No exceptions. Gasps broke out. Some ministers protested. One slammed his fist against the table. This is reckless. The Treasury cannot sustain it. Ibrahim's eyes flashed. The Treasury can sustain palaces, cars, and foreign trips, but not medicine for a dying child. Then what are we? Answer me. No one spoke. He stood, his presence towering, his voice echoing like a verdict. You sit here in comfort while men like Abdoulaye die in the dust. That ends today. If you cannot serve the people, step aside. If you cannot see their pain, you have no right to lead. Silence. Only the hum of the ceiling fan filled the air. One by one, eyes dropped. The weight of his words pressed harder than any law. Finally, one young advisor spoke, his voice hesitant but clear. Excellency, perhaps you are right. Perhaps this is the moment to prove we are not like the regimes before us. Ibrahim nodded slowly. Not perhaps. Certainly. This is the moment. He closed the folder with finality. I will not allow another Abdoulaye to be broken by this system. We will change it even if I must tear it apart with my own hands. As the meeting ended, word spread through the corridors. Guards, clerks, secretaries all whispered of the president's fury, his vow. Outside the palace, the streets grew alive with anticipation. Some doubted, but others believed. For the first time in years, people felt that their cries might finally be heard. And in his private office that night, Ibrahim stood by the window, staring into the dark horizon. Somewhere across the city, Abdoulaye was resting in a clean bed, breathing steady, alive. Ibrahim whispered into the silence, a vow carried only by the night air. No one else will be invisible. Not while I stand. Days turned into weeks. Abdoulaye's life began to shift, piece by fragile piece. At the hospital, he received medicine, proper meals, and rest. Things he had long forgotten were possible. His cheeks slowly regained color, his body no longer trembling with every step. The man who once lay on cold pavement now walked hallways lined with light. Nurses greeted him with respect, calling him Sir, a title that once seemed impossible for a broken man. Ibrahim visited often, never announcing his arrival. Sometimes he found Abdoulaye sitting by the window, staring at the gardens below. Other times, reading simple newspapers aloud, his voice rough but steady. Each time, Ibrahim would place a hand on his shoulder, reminding him silently, "You are not alone." One morning after weeks of care, the doctors declared him stable. They wheeled him outside, where the sun painted the sky gold. The light struck his face, and for the first time in years, his eyes truly shone. A small crowd had gathered, staff, neighbors, strangers who had followed his story. As Abdoulaye stepped into the open air, they clapped. Some wiped tears, others smiled with pride. He froze, overwhelmed, his voice barely above a whisper. All this, for me. Ibrahim walked to his side, his voice strong enough for everyone to hear. For you, yes, but also for every man and woman who feels forgotten. Today you stand not just for yourself, but for them. The crowd erupted in applause, and Abdoulaye's tears spilled freely. He covered his face, trembling not from weakness this time, but from joy. Later that evening, Ibrahim invited him to a small gathering in the palace garden. No cameras, no reporters, just family close friends and a few staff members. Lanterns flickered, casting warm light across the tables. As they sat together, Ibrahim raised a glass. "Abdoulaye," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you for feeding me when I was hungry. Thank you for teaching me kindness when I was a boy. Tonight I do not stand as president. I stand as your brother, and I say this. You gave me life, once now I give it back to you." The two men embraced, and the garden fell silent. Then slowly the silence broke first, with sniffles, then with soft applause, until the air itself seemed to vibrate with hope. The following week, Ibrahim took Abdoulaye to a small cream-colored house at the edge of the city. Its garden was neat, its windows open to the morning sun. "It's yours," Ibrahim said simply. Abdoulaye shook his head in disbelief. "No, this is too much. I cannot accept." "You must," Ibrahim interrupted gently, "because you once gave me what you could not spare. Now I give you what I can never repay." Abdoulaye stepped inside, his hands tracing the walls, the doors, the shelves. Every corner felt unreal. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, "After all these years, I finally have a home again." That night he slept on a clean bed beneath a roof that was his. He woke to bird song, to sunlight, to a future he thought had died long ago. And when he looked in the mirror the next morning, he no longer saw a beggar. He saw a man reborn. For a time, Abdoulaye's life settled into quiet rhythm. He tended to his small garden, greeted neighbors with a smile, and walked each morning with a steadiness that felt like a miracle. Hope had returned, but peace, it seemed, was not ready to stay undisturbed. One afternoon, as he arranged books in his modest living room, a knock sounded at the door. Abdoulaye opened it and froze. Standing there was a woman he once knew too well, his former wife. Her clothes were worn, her jewelry gone. Lines of hardship cut across her once proud face. Beside her sat a small suitcase, battered and old. "Abdoulaye," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "I have nowhere else to go." The air thickened. Memories of betrayal surged the day she left him, the cruel words, the lies in court. Abdoulaye's chest tightened. Part of him wanted to slam the door to shut out the ghost of his suffering. But she continued, voice trembling. "The man I chose, he abandoned me, took everything. I lost the house, the money. Even our son no longer speaks to me. Please, let me stay just for a while." Abdoulaye stood silent. The weight of her plea pressed hard. Anger battled with pity inside him. For a long moment the room was still. Then slowly he spoke. His voice was calm, steady, not bitter, but firm. "I forgave you long ago, but forgiveness is not the same as return. My life has peace now. You cannot stay here. Not this time." Her head dropped. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I understand." She turned, suitcase dragging against the dirt road. From the gate, Ibrahim watched. He had arrived quietly just in time to witness the exchange. As the woman disappeared into the distance, he placed a hand on Abdoulaye's shoulder. "You chose dignity over bitterness," Ibrahim said softly. "That is true strength." Abdoulaye nodded, though his eyes glistened. "I once thought I was weak, but now I know strength is not in revenge. It's in refusing to let pain rule me." That evening, as neighbors gathered in his yard, Abdoulaye shared the story, not with anger, but with calm acceptance. And the people listened, many moved to tears. For them, his choice was more than personal. It was a lesson. From that day, Abdoulaye was no longer seen as the man who had fallen, but as the man who had risen and taught others how to rise too. Weeks later, Abdoulaye stood in front of a small building painted in warm yellow. Above the doorway hung a simple wooden sign, Community Learning Center. Inside, children crowded around desks, their voices buzzing with excitement. Some clutched notebooks, others shared pencils worn to stubs. For them, this place was more than a school. It was hope reborn. Abdoulaye walked through the rows, his step steady, his smile gentle. He paused beside a boy struggling to read. Kneeling, he whispered, "Do not fear the words. They are your friends. Learn them, and they will carry you where your feet cannot." The boy's eyes lit up, and Abdoulaye felt a strength he thought was lost forever. Outside, a small crowd gathered as Ibrahim arrived. The president stepped inside, quietly watching his old neighbor guide the children with patience and care. Then he turned to the people and spoke. "No one should ever be abandoned," his voice echoed. A nation's true strength is not measured by its wealth or its armies, but by how it lifts its weakest. Abdoulaye was once invisible to the world. Today he is a light to many. Let his story remind us dignity must never be denied to any soul. Applause filled the room. Some wept openly, others clasped their hands in gratitude. Ibrahim placed his hand on Abdoulaye's shoulder, smiling. "This is not charity," he said. "This is justice, and justice means no one is left behind." For Abdoulaye, the moment was more than recognition. It was a rebirth not just of his life, but of his purpose. He had fallen, yes, but now he stood not only for himself, but for everyone who still waited to be seen. The sun dipped low over Ouagadougou, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson. In the quiet garden of the Community Learning Center, Abdoulaye and Ibrahim stood side by side, watching children chase each other across the yard. Their laughter rang out like music echoing into the fading day. For a moment, neither man spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them carried years of hardship, betrayal, and loss, but also forgiveness, renewal, and hope. Abdoulaye's eyes shimmered as he whispered, "I never thought I would see this day. To fall so far, and yet to rise again." Ibrahim placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You rose because you never gave up. You carried pain, but you never let it destroy you. And now, your story will carry others." As the last rays of sunlight bathed the scene, a small crowd gathered at the fence. Neighbors, teachers, strangers who had followed Abdoulaye's journey. One by one, they clapped, not for a president, not for politics, but for a man who had once been invisible and was now a symbol of resilience. Children ran to Abdoulaye, wrapping their arms around him. He bent down, embracing them, his tears falling freely. It was not weakness, it was gratitude. Gratitude for a second chance at life. Gratitude for the brother who refused to let him disappear. Ibrahim's voice rose once more, steady and resonant. "Remember this day. Remember this story. Because kindness is not weakness, it is power. And true power is not measured by how high we climb, but by how many we lift along the way." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices carrying into the evening sky. The camera lingered on the two men, one who gave, one who received both, forever changed. The sun slipped beyond the horizon, but the light of their story burned brighter than ever. If this story touched your heart, comment 1 below. If not, comment 0. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove the power of compassion and true leadership.